Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to see if his brother can do the same thing. I feel like age is a very overrated factor in Pokemon, especially with the best masters getting younger and younger. Like that, it's like 15 to 17-ish group seems to be much stronger than some of the older guys. And I'm just curious how young you can go. Like the best seniors have always been very competitive with the best masters, and I imagine Brendan will be one of the best seniors, this year. But we'll see if he needs another year in the battle to play against some better competition, or if he'll be able to put up a strong showing already, which would really say a lot about, I guess, the strength of someone his age.
Yeah, I mean, certain players like Snake in the past have had difficulty going into the seniors, uh, especially this year for Snake. But he did do very excellent last year, so a lot of it is luck of the draw, and I expect big things from Brendan here throughout this season, and going forward into the his entire career of Pokemon, because he is such a young player and he seems to really enjoy the game.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine anyone who's been even nearly as successful as him. I feel like the first couple events of the year will probably be tough for him, but I thought that would be the same case with his brother when he moved up to Masters, and that didn't happen. He made it to the finals of his first regionals, so maybe the Zangs have it figured out. And I know Aaron's always had the opinion that he thinks Brendan will do better in seniors than he was doing in juniors, just because he's used to playing against stronger opponents, and juniors don't always predict the way that maybe an experienced player would expect them to. So this might be right up Brendan's alley, and his transition might actually be a little bit easier than maybe we expected it to be. Though, I mean, you're right with Snake, where I expected his transition to be a little easier than it seems to have been as well. And then on the other side, we've got Jumpei here, who's actually kind of an interesting story too, just because we didn't see anything from him this year. I know he was playing a bit in Japan's Wi-Fi qualifier and got frustrated with the disconnections and the general terrible infrastructure there, and opted not to try to make the rankings to qualify for nationals this year. So hopefully we'll see Jumpei back in the fray in real life next year. But he certainly hasn't fallen off any as a player. It wasn't his fault so much as the systems, I guess, that we didn't hear from him in 2013. So it'll be interesting to see what he's been doing the last year as well. I'm excited to see what he brings.
Yeah, it is unfortunate for the Japanese players where they get to have one big year, then they have to deal again with the unfortunate I guess qualifying method for how they qualify for Worlds and especially their nationals. Luckily for Ryosuke, he's going to be able to go to Worlds again next year without qualifying through the Japanese nationals. So hopefully they'll continue to send great players that they'll have a struggle getting to the World just because of how difficult it is to qualify there, but we'll have at least Ryosuke there and potentially a lot more excellent players.
Yeah, I think that's one thing to remember too. But both, I guess all four of the Japanese qualifiers and Masters the last 2 years were really strong at Worlds. I mean, and other than, I guess, Korea, which doesn't count because Seijin is basically his own country. But it's difficult to have top to bottom everyone you send to Worlds is a really strong performer. But in 2012, we had Huryu, who went 3-3 in Swiss and had a pretty difficult schedule, and then Jumpei, obviously, who made top 8 and lost to Ray and pushed Ray farther than anyone else went. I think Ray didn't lose any series that year, and he was very close to losing to Jumpei. So I think that's pretty impressive in its own. And then last year we had Haruto, who finished I think 10th at 4-2, and then second place Gabibo. So the Japanese players at Worlds have been excellent, even though because of their format sort of being a little lackluster. It's I guess there's always some question about whether or not they're actually sending the best players, and whether they are, they're not. The players they're sending have been fantastic. So eager to see what we get from Japan next year, and eager to see what we get from their Worlds players in this tournament. We don't get to see them play enough, so I'm really excited to see what we see here.
You're actually forgetting they sent one more through LCQ. Obviously not through the nationals, but his name was Shota, and I can't yeah.
Nakata,
I played him
also in this event, actually. Yeah. So yeah, he's the fourth Worlds player since we don't have Haruto this time. But yeah, I forget. I think he went 3-3 as well, and also had some pretty strong opponents there. So I mean, just consistent, impressive play from that whole country. Really, the whole LCQ in general, there were a lot of really terrifying Japanese players this year. I think maybe some of the American players who went to LCQ were expecting it to be a little bit easier than it was, just because so many of the better players from Europe and North America had qualified already, unlike in previous years where the always interesting only nationals counts qualification system had maybe not sent all of the best players to Worlds. This year, there was certainly more, even though it's not perfect, but it was better. So I think people had expected LCQ to be a lot easier. And the big corkscrew in that was that Japan sent a whole bunch of players, all of which were very good, and Singapore did the same thing actually. So we saw Shota make it through, and Huryu went pretty deep too. I think he lost in the top 8, so or maybe it was top 16 to Metabu. So there was a lot of really interesting and challenging foreign opposition there. And outside of LCQ and actual Worlds, I guess we just don't get to see each other battle very much. So hopefully we do more of these in XY.
Yeah, I actually had to play Shota in the last match. It was a top 8, and the winner got to go on to Worlds, and unfortunately he kind of steamrolled me because I wasn't really prepared for that team matchup, and you gave me a pretty Japanese similar team that I'm sure he was absolutely thrilled to see because he's probably played against it a ton. And he did make it through. I had to unfortunately knock out some Canadians in their home country, but there was a lot of international competition, and hopefully future Worlds and LCQs will continue to bring that.
Yeah, I think that was kind of one of the interesting storylines in general of several matches, I guess, was those of us were using very Japanese-inspired teams seem to run into a disproportionate amount of Japanese players. And I mean, it hasn't always been the case that, I guess, the Japanese players win in that matchup. I know Huryu played both Mike and Danny in 2012 Worlds, and I think he went 1-1, but really should have went 0-2 if the RNG hadn't helped them out a bit. So, I mean, it can go both ways there, I guess, but it was a rough road this year. And I know Fish hit Huryu in LCQ this year using a variant of ours Rain team, which, again, I'm sure Huryu was licking his chops when he saw, since he'd certainly run variants of that before himself. And I guess sort of one of the most recent versions of that team was what he was using against Ray today. So a bit of a rough draw there, but that's sort of the fun of LCQ, is that all those teams and styles and various uses of each other's strategies all kind of come together in one big melting pot tournament. Even more so than Real Worlds, I guess, where people tend to come up with a little more original options.
Yeah, Worlds you tend to see the interesting things like Sajin's Magmar and just random kind of off the wall things that sort of counter the World's metagame. But LCQ you tend to go with something kind of safe that and the Japanese players and Singapore players, everyone did that, and it showed that the strong players did make it through. I don't think there was any unfortunate losses or anything completely changed through the LCQ.
Yeah, I mean, the LCQ players, just like last year, did pretty well too. Like, I think over the last 2 years, the average record of an LCQ player is like somewhere between 3-3 and 4-2, which is a lot better than it had been previously. I guess for the audience here, we do apologize for the wait once again. We are trying to get the match set up here. I'm not sure if Jumpei knows he needs to be on yet or not. Brendan is waiting in the Wi-Fi room, I believe. So shouldn't be too much longer. We apologize for the inconvenience again. One of the kind of caveats of having to do the international thing is that sometimes it's difficult to communicate and there's little errors that happen. Apparently there's actually a mistake in the friend code. So they're reconnecting and this should be done fairly soon. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to communicate sometimes. It takes a little bit to get through the connecting thing, but sooner or later we will show you a great match probably. On the bright side, we've given you a great chance to get a drink, run to the restroom, call your girlfriend, play Grand Theft Auto. I don't know. Think of something. Watch that match on YouTube from last year's Worlds I told you about. But yeah, so I think that we're fairly close now. Brendan is reconnecting to Wi-Fi, which hopefully will work better than Aaron's Wi-Fi, and even though it's the same Wi-Fi, so not holding my breath.
Can we get a sideline reporter Aaron Zhang on this? Maybe could give us an update from the field.
An update from the router. The green lights are on, Paul. Come on, Aaron.
So hopefully they get to this because unfortunately Wi-Fi. There it goes. Brendan's having trouble connecting apparently now.
It
So
just wouldn't be Pokemon if everything worked.
yeah, hopefully, and we continue to say this, XY will fix these kind of issues. So it's really no fun having to deal with this and trying to cast at the same time, but we do what we can, and hopefully you enjoy what we can bring you.
I mean, we apologize again, but there isn't great technology for doing this without spending lots of money. You can use capture cards, which lets you transmit what's happening on your DS to the internet. Oh, I guess it still wouldn't help the connection thing, but the flaw with that obviously is that most players don't have one. So for those of you who don't, you have lots of interesting streaming problems like these. But we're almost there. Brendan is seeking participants, so soon, TM.
Light at the end of the tunnel. So as we continue to wait here, X and Y, make sure you stay tuned for that. Hopefully we bring a lot of new things, information-wise in the coming weeks. Make sure you stay tuned to certain sites like Maryland, who is playing later in this best of 7 series against Pokemon Smash's own Yamamoto, who also played in the LCQ. Mike and Scott mentioned earlier that he defeated Illuminate Starmie Guy, who defeated Enosh Human the previous year. Scott, what do you think we can expect to see from Yamamoto and Maryland?
I mean, that'll definitely be the one match that's most difficult to predict, right? Maryland, I'm not quite sure. I've run into Maryland at events before. I've never played against him, but he's one of those guys who just kind of goes there to make things more fun. I've never really seen him actively attempting to win matches, so that should be interesting. I think he's definitely the underdog against Yamamoto, just because I guess he's kind of like the competitive guy in the Smash scene, right? Like he's played this quite a bit. He was pretty good in LCQ actually. It was a pretty fun match. So it'll be a tricky match for Maryland here, but he's a smart guy, and I have faith in him. I also apologize to him for putting him this terrible last match slot, because having to battle in that before playing an EST, that's no fun.
Yeah, watching Maryland, he uploaded a video on a regional day, and I was able to see that while I was at home, and he's using something like a trick Master Ball Togekiss, just to inject a little fun into the game, and I always enjoy things like that. Hui and other users like that, inject a little bit of fun. This is definitely a great spot to have fun, but at the same time try to win, and hopefully we see that from Maryland himself, because he is a good-natured guy, and he's definitely he's here to have some fun.
Yeah, so the one time I did play or I guess not the one time, but one time I played the same event of him. I know he was kitty corner to me, and he was against Kamal, who I was right next to, and that was the Trick Master Ball event. And Kamal's not the most expressive fellow in the world, but he was quite surprised by that indeed. We do see the match coming into team preview here. We've got Thunderous Therian form, Landorus Therian form, Cresselia, Metagross, Tyranitar, and Gastrodon from Jumpei's side. So I hate to use the term, it's a pretty standard Japanese-looking team here, but it's a pretty standard Japanese-looking team here.
Yeah, I mean the Therians. I think Americans, North Americans, they definitely caught on to Landorus and maybe Thunderous Therian forms really kind of late after Japanese nationals, and watching all their Wi-Fi battles. We didn't really see much of either of those Pokemon until post Japanese nationals, and I think Jumpei is probably pretty strong with both of those Pokemon, just because he's probably been playing with them for an inordinate amount of time, and he's probably ready to do SmackDown on. We don't really see Brendan's team. Do we have his team?
I don't know if we do or if we don't. I guess we can see if Aaron can give it to us. In the meantime, I will say I am not sold on Thundurus, Therian Form, or Gastrodon. There's two Pokemon that Japan uses a lot more than we're using, and I know it's like my job to be like the Japanese Monte Cristo of Pokemon and always convince everyone that whatever Japan is doing is right because it's huge in Japan. But I'm actually not a big fan of either of those Pokemon. I think there's a reason they don't have a big part in our metagame, and I just don't think that they're that good. I think that they're both very exploitable. Thundurus mostly because of its speed, and the output is like just low enough that it doesn't do enough usually. We do see Bisharp and Raikou from Brendan's side, so if I wasn't rooting for him already because he is our token, little brother's little brother figure, and also because he's the world champion, he's now got my favorite Pokemon out there. So if he loses, I'm going to be very upset.
So now in this situation, both players have a steel and an electric type, but in this situation, Jumpei has the Volt Absorb Thundurus. Now, is that going to be a huge factor here for Brendan?
Yeah, I really don't like Brendan's spot here. Well, I do love looking at Raikou. I think that's my favorite part of the situation. Raikou, unlike whereas Thundurus Therian Form is like the most defensive electric type, Raikou's sort of in between, where it's not quite as defensive as Thundurus Incarnate Form is, but it's mostly a support Pokemon for most people. Snarl and the Light Screen and Reflect are the major reasons it sees use. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those moves. Bisharp's threatening some damage here, but the threat of Earthquake from Metagross is pretty scary here, unless Brendan chooses to double target. It's an awkward spot.
Now, similar to what Ryosuke was using with Volcarona and Bisharp, Brendan could potentially be doing the same thing here with Bisharp and Raikou, with a Calm Mind or any other sort of setup move.
Yeah, it's like bring your own Bisharp night here at Nugget Bridge. Just 3 series in a row with it, all being used a little differently too. Raikou's setup options are not quite as threatening as Volcarona's would be. Whereas, with Quiver Dance, it's actually going to sweep you, whereas Raikou's just going to help its buddies get a little bit stronger. But we do see a switch from Jumpei's in to start things out. So yeah, Gastrodon coming in for Thundurus T, and we do see a double target potentially from Brendan's side here, and both Thunderbolt and Night Slash hitting the Metagross. But it doesn't quite take it out. Metagross hangs out at like 1 hit point, then whiffs the Hammer Arm and Bisharp there. Big plays back and forth there.
Yeah, completely unfortunate for Brendan to not get that KO there, but then Jumpei misses the Hammer Arm, so back to square one essentially. Except Brendan's got a huge advantage, mostly because Metagross potentially does not have Earthquake for this situation, so Brendan could potentially do a lot more damage without fearing for Earthquake in this game and future games.
Yeah, a lot of interesting information there too with Metagross using Hammer Arm. It's not a very common move on Metagross, so I guess it helps him infer other things about the moveset here. And also lets him get Snarl off pretty easily there because it would have gotten the Metagross knockout. So basically a free turn for Raikou there. We also see Bisharp firing off the Night Slash onto Gastrodon there, but Gastrodon busts out the Substitute, which I guess is actually another one of those interesting regional differences. Substitute Gastrodon basically doesn't exist in North America. It may as well not be a thing. But actually one of the more common moves on Gastrodon in Japan, it's something I usually expect from them, and I know we've seen in several of their friendly matches against Korea and in the past, so not too surprised to see that here, but Brendan may be, depending on how much he's looked into the Japanese opponents before.
Well, what sort of advantages does Substitute bring over, the standard American set?
I mean, Gastrodon's a naturally bulky Pokemon, and with leftovers, it's even more difficult to take out. So it lets it protect it from certain things. Like, for instance, Raikou can't just Snarl again to lower its special attack, which I think would be, an obvious move otherwise. It may not be, or it may be that Brendan can't actually knock Gastrodon out this turn too, because unless Raikou can break its Substitute, it's going to get an attack off here, and Earth Power would do tons of damage to either Bisharp or Raikou, whereas with most other moves there, it would have been not, or he would have been able to knock it out this turn. Although I guess he would have also gotten the Earth Power before, so it kind of makes you wonder how far ahead he actually got doing that.
So we have a revolving door of Pokemon here. Jumpei just continues to switch out that slot from Metagross to Thundurus to now Cresselia. And we see some Protects and a Snarl again from Brendan. Substitute taking the damage. It's critical hits, but of course it does not break the sub as you predicted. So is Jumpei sort of digging himself a hole by just continuing to switch and not really doing any damage here?
It certainly looks like it. He really, really couldn't afford to have that hammer arm miss there, and I don't want to lament that hammer arm miss too much, just because presumably, based on the potential number rolls there, Raikou and Bisharp could have knocked it out anyway. So it's not like that was just, I guess it wasn't as unlucky as it looked probably. But he's got 3 Pokemon who really, really don't want to get snarled, and then Metagross who would be knocked out by Snarl, so I guess it now wants to get snarled even less. So like taking all of that damage without doing anything to either Raikou or Bisharp makes this a really tough position for him. I'm not sure I see what the out is. He's really got to get rid of both of these Pokemon to be able to make any headway, because if Raikou just keeps snarling, he's never going to be able to do meaningful damage. And if he doesn't take out Bisharp here, he basically can't attack safely with anything. Metagross would get knocked out before it can move. Cresselia would take a ton of damage here if it tries to attack. Thundurus T, and the same thing. It's pretty frail, so it doesn't want to take a sucker punch. He doesn't seem to have a good way of dealing with Raikou here, and Bisharp protecting it.
So we're just going to see another Snarl here, taking the substitute damage, and the substitute does fade here. I wonder if Brendan is predicting that. There's a Thunder Wave onto that Bisharp from the Cresselia. And Brendan does not predict that and opts for the Night Slash onto the Cresselia, taking the for sure damage, and gets the knockout.
It's still a big knockout for him. I think I almost like that play better. Gastrodon's not doing a whole lot here, especially with it choosing to target Bisharp.
And Bisharp survives, eventually due to the previous Snarl several turns ago, where he got to get a Snarl off for free.
And Snarl's really making the plays this game. It put Cresselia's health low enough that Bisharp was able to knock it out with Night Slash, and is able to keep Bisharp alive as well. And now we're in a really tough slot here. We have 2 Pokemon out here who really don't want their special attack lowered even further by Snarl, because they're just not going to be able to take Raikou out. And Sucker Punch would do huge damage to either of them, get them. I'm not sure if Snarl and Sucker Punch would knock Gastrodon out, but it almost certainly would knock out Thundurus here. It's not safe to bring Metagross in because Raikou will almost certainly use Snarl, which would knock it out unless it misses. So this is a really tough spot for Jumpei here. He may not even be able to get through Brendan's leads this game.
So an odd Pokemon choice in Raikou is paying huge dividends here for him because of a little spread move that isn't really commonly known or used in Snarl. It's definitely not as used as Icy Wind, but it's as I said, paying huge dividends for Brendan here because he's able to he's got so many win conditions here. It's essentially it's unbelievable. We haven't even seen his rear 2 Pokemon, and it's just Jumpei's in such a huge hole here. It's pretty interesting, how he can potentially dig himself out of here.
And we will get to see one of the back Pokemon here is Thundurus protects the Snarl and Gastrodon's able to knock out Bisharp, but we now have -2 special attack Gastrodon out here. Raikou's still chilling at full health there, threatening that Snarl, and Brendan gets a free switch into something at full health here. Still, it's a 3-3 game now, but Metagross, at a single hit point, I believe. And Thundurus and Gastrodon here, both very vulnerable to Snarl, unless Brendan's got something that's like 4 times weak to one of their moves here. They're going to have a really tough time doing any damage. And I guess we see another Pokemon here who's not too big on doing damage, but it's going to make it even more difficult to stop Raikou from snarling all over the place.
Yeah, it is interesting to see that Jumpei hasn't targeted that Raikou at all here, and is still at full health. And with all these snarls, is he going to be able to even knock it out?
Yeah, Raiko's base special defense is actually pretty high too. I mean, you think about the legendary electric Pokemon mostly being offensive, but Raiko's actually a little bit bulkier than some of the other ones, at least in the special side. So it's going to be really tough to take him out mostly using special attacks, and I can't imagine a route that Jumpei has to hit Raikou with a physical attack at this point. So I don't know how you break the stall. It's a little weird to see Raikou stalling a team out here, but I love it, and it's pretty exciting. I guess we've seen some strange strategies today, but most of the other things that have been winning have been a little more conventional, whereas Raikou here is not the ordinary.
Now, I mean, I can't just say that he's going to win here, but Brennan has to be thinking about a game two now because just the overwhelming advantage he has here. And we see another attack from Raikou here, no longer a Snarl. It's a hidden power directed towards that Thundurus, and it's super effective. So got a little bit of information there, but potentially it doesn't even matter because Brennan has an overwhelming advantage.
Yeah, we do see that Raikou's running the more standard Raikou set here. It kind of originated from Korea, I believe, but it's the Shuckaberry Thunderbolt Hidden Power Ice Snarl thing, which is a really good set, actually. I keep meaning to work with it just because I like it when other people use it, but I haven't figured out exactly how I think it fits onto a team. But it's one of the stronger unconventional support Pokemon. Snarl is a really powerful move, and Raikou is its best user. And I guess we're seeing in this game exactly why that can be so strong. If you can avoid getting in situations your opponent's picking a bunch of physical Pokemon, Raikou can really slow down the game. It's extremely fast, so it's going to outrun basically every standard Pokemon that isn't using Choice Scarf, and it does a great job of reducing the damage opponent special attackers do, and with no weaknesses for essentially because of the Shuckaberry, it's tough to knock it down quickly before it can get a couple snarls off.
Yeah, especially when a Pokemon like Gastrodon relies on special attack, and as we saw, that Earth Power did 20 damage there, and due to the Shucka and all those snarls. So if you're something like Heatran or Gastrodon that relies on a special version of a ground attack, that Raikou really doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, you get a couple styles up there. I mean, it's like it really doesn't have any weaknesses. I mean, it really has to be careful with boosted earthquakes in particular, but other than that, it's not a big deal there. A little surprised to see Brendan using Spore there, so just taking the knockout with the Giga Drain there, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. He still has full health and Mungus there, so he's playing with his food a little bit. I imagine he'll close this up pretty quickly, though. He can pretty much just snarl his way to victory now with the Sleeping Gastrodon and Thundurus and Metagross as low as they are.
It is interesting. Such a weak move is absolutely just destroying Jumpei here. I think it has base 40. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but that's just completely ridiculous how much damage it's able to rack up and prevent over the course of this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the really interesting advantages of it too, is that most support moves you're sacrificing your damage to get that support benefit. Like Spore, for example, you instead of your other effect, you get to sleep them, which is still very strong. We saw Light Screen from Rotom win a game for his brother Aaron last series, but all you get is the special defense. You don't get to attack too. But in addition to lowering the special attack of the opponents, Raikou keeps getting to do its chip damage, and over the course of the battle, it adds up. Like I would be surprised if it didn't do about a Pokemon's worth of health with Snarl there, just because it was out there snarling every single turn. And it's a special Pokemon that you can send out in turn 1 and win the battle with it still out in that same slot. And I'm sure Jumpei will adjust his Pokemon choices this game to try to deal with that. It'll depend on what he has available, though, how well he can even do that. I know we saw Landorus Therian form, for instance, in Team Preview, but it'll depend on what its item is, how well it can actually deal with that. Something like Yacht or Focus Sash, it can at least take one Hidden Power Ice and fire back, but it doesn't actually win one-on-one because Earthquake reduces the damage, and there's no Landorus set that can survive 2 of those Hidden Power Ices. So he's going to have to find a strategy involving multiple Pokemon to deal with that Raikou this time. He also has to be really careful for Bisharp with Landorus too. So it's a tough team to break.
What he runs into with potentially using Landorus to counter that. And as I said, all the damage that this Raikou is preventing and dealing at the same time. It's just it's winning the game almost solo here. Its partner just there to help back it up, I guess. And it's interesting how a not very used Pokemon like Raikou is able to just completely dominate a world class competitor in Jumpei here. Jumpei is a top 8 at Worlds, uh, second at a Japanese nationals. He's no slouch, and Raikou here is just showing what he can do.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate the depth of Pokemon available in the game. There's a pool of, I'd say, like 30, 40 Pokemon that, get the spotlight, and most of them deservedly so. But that doesn't mean that, the next 20, 30 Pokemon aren't plenty viable if you use them well. And Raikou's one of those Pokemon that got like 0 usage this year, basically. I know he was on Dingram's seniors national champion runner-up team. But other than that, didn't really see a whole lot of high-profile usage. But obviously, strong enough to be on a good team. If you want to build around it instead of one of the other support Pokemon, you can absolutely be very effective doing so. And I think it's one of those Pokemon where if you do want to be a little bit more unconventional, there's a lot of opportunity there to be successful. Going into the second game here, I think one thing that really hurts Jumpei too, in addition to how bad his problems seem to be matching up with the whole Raikou Bisharp thing, is in addition to those problems, he didn't get very much information that game. One of the most important parts of progressing through a best of 3 is even if you lose the first game, you need to get information so that you can make better decisions in the next game and fix problems. And he learned a lot about Brendan's leads that game. He knows their items, he knows their movesets. But he didn't learn anything basically about Brendan's other Pokemon. He didn't even see one of them. So it makes it much more difficult to anticipate what Brendan's likely to bring. And he got no information about half of Brendan's team there. So that's going to make this next game much more difficult than it would normally be.
Yeah, so going into this game, let's see if they change their leads. Still, okay, here we go. Going into it, Jumpei needs to absolutely adjust here to what Brendan was bringing. And looks like Jumpei continues with the Metagross and Thundurus, while Brendan is going to switch it up. What do you think of Brendan being the one to switch it up and not Jumpei?
Well, I appreciate his guts. I mean, I don't know his 6 Pokemon, so it's harder for me to evaluate whether or not I think this is a good decision. I think that Brendan is likely assuming that he doesn't want to rely on getting or not getting that knockout at Metagross. I think it was a surprising play in the first game to double target Metagross, and that Jumpei would likely react to it better if he tried to do the same thing this game. So I do appreciate his decision to change things up a little bit here. I don't know what's likely to happen here because I don't know enough about his team. We do see with Cresselia here, it's a bulkier Cresselia, not an offensive variant, since it's running like 220-ish EVs and special HP. But other than that, not too much extra info here. I would expect a Trick Room mode, but not sure.
Yeah, we don't know much of anything about Brendan's team. We have same information as Jumpei, perhaps even less because we don't know Brendan's 6 Pokemon.
I will say, I'm really curious to see if Metagross is choice banded. We know Jumpei likes it because he ran it at Worlds last year. And I don't know how you find room for Hammer Arm unless you're using a choice band. So I feel like something like a Protect Explosion, assuming Thundurus isn't choiced, would be an interesting option here that Brendan needs to consider.
Would that kind of damage be... okay, we're going to see a switch from Jumpei.
Good old Tyranitar.
Yeah. Yep, there's our friend Tyranitar on nearly half the teams from Worlds.
Probably the best Pokemon in the metagame, but nothing too exciting here. Just a Meteor Mash. Man.
So just I don't even know how to, just a dead turn, something that happened. Some damage was dealt.
I mean, not too dead, right? That's a lot of damage from Meteor Mash.
Yeah, that was, I guess,
it does confirm my item prediction there, yeah.
Yeah. And now it has an attack boost, so how dangerous is that Metagross now?
Yeah, I mean, he's in trouble. I mean, Sucker Punch will help a little bit if he wants to, but he probably doesn't want to just stick around and let Tyranitar whack him. It'd be very easy for Brendan to lose 2 Pokemon in this turn, and just giving that free turn to Metagross and then having it get that attack boost like that is really devastating. He may be better off just protecting Bisharp and giving Cresselia up for free if he's got something in the back that can help him sort this out a little bit, because he's in a hole now and he's just got to try to mitigate his losses.
Attack boosted, choice band boosted, same type attack bonus, meteor mashes. Can't take those very lightly. And Ryosuke, again, switching his Pokemon out. He never keeps his Pokemon in to a Cresselia. And we're going to see the Dark Gem Sucker Punch on that Metagross as predicted. And Brendan just trying to deal as much damage as he can this turn and gets a clutch freeze there.
But Lady Luck is not a biased party here.
How big is that freeze? I mean, we don't know what that Cresselia could potentially do, but essentially a knocked out Pokemon, if you think about it. Chances of thawing are pretty low, so you have essentially a knocked out Pokemon. What do you do here if you Jumpei?
I mean, it depends. Your odds of thawing are higher the first turn, so I would probably roll this once, but I guess it depends a lot on Brendan's moveset here. There's two interesting moves that he may have. I don't know if he's using. Have we seen Cresselia's item at all? If not, I'm curious if he's got the rest set. And then, if not, I'm curious if he has Helping Hand, because that'll let Raikou knock out Metagross, or at least force it out and get rid of that attack boost. But I guess Lady Luck going both ways there, because Metagross, I don't believe it gets that knockout without the critical hit on Bisharp. So that hurts a lot also. So, I mean, the freeze is bigger if Cresselia stays frozen, don't get me wrong, but potentially some benefit both directions there.
And the Metagross, Jumpei just continue to switching is interesting to me. That he's gonna switch out that boosted Metagross, but I guess he wants to mitigate the damage from Raikou's Snarl.
A little surprised to see Snarl, actually.
Yeah, interesting moves by both sides here. Let's see if this Cresselia thaws is a big turn for it.
No thaw for Cresselia. And
no thaw,
we do see a rest from Babbytron's Cresselia, so I was right about that as well. I don't know what I think about his ability to deal with a Tyranitar now. He's got two Pokemon that aren't going to do very much to it, but Cresselia healing up is a big deal there, because he essentially evens the game here as long as the enemy Cresselia stays frozen for a while. And if he's got something in the back that can help him deal with this Tyranitar here, he's still in a pretty decent spot. The freeze is huge, though. As soon as that Cresselia thaws, it's going to make things a lot trickier. But he's got to have something to help deal with Tyranitar if he's going to have a chance at this game. Because even though the freeze is a big break for him, Tyranitar is still bulky. He's got that Sandstorm boost protecting him against Raikou and Cresselia, who are both defensive special attackers. So they're going to have a harder time breaking through that Sandstorm boost than something like Gladios would.
Now, when you're playing against a Pokemon that is frozen, how do you approach it? Do you assume it's going to wake up every turn, or you just assume it? It's not there at all, and focus on the second Pokemon?
I think you've got to go somewhere in the middle on that one. Completely ignoring it is usually foolish, because you don't want to give it the chance to thaw, but in the same token, you don't want to focus it either, because then you waste your advantage. So I think the trick is usually that you want to make sure you don't put yourself in any holes where, if it does thaw, you'll lose the game unless you absolutely have to, or at least take a Pokemon for free if it thaws. But usually you want to focus on that other target there, especially if it's something that's not likely to protect. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Tyranitar does protect here to try and stall a turn, trying to get Cresselia thawing for him, but or makes a switch even, which might be the safer play.
Yeah, the sand damage could add up here. So even if the Cresselia never thaws, just it potentially being there to thaw could help Jumpei out. And we're going to see a switch from Brendan to Conkeldurr, which is a Pokemon that loves to deal with Tyranitar. But we do see a thaw as well, so and a Side Shock directed towards that Conkeldurr. Scott, how do you deal with that?
I mean, that's definitely unfortunate timing for Brendan there. I mean, the freeze almost ends up hurting him because maybe he doesn't take that risk if he doesn't have or if it's not um, frozen to begin with for that to be a viable risk. And I guess that's the danger of just assuming it's going to stay frozen, right? As you open yourself up to situations like that. It definitely wasn't a turn where he would have lost the game had he been wrong there. And I think leaving Raiko in wouldn't have helped him that much either. Just losing Bisharp the way he did would just put him in a tough spot in this one. And I don't know. You got to assume you got to protect from Tyranitar here. So, I mean, just a tough spot for Brendan here. Just trying to hope that Jumpei gives him something.
So suddenly, Brendan's advantage is no longer there, and he has to deal with an unthawed Cresselia. And as you predicted, they both protect, so dead turn for those two, while Cresselia Ice Beams, maybe hoping for another freeze, doesn't get it, and, Psyshock directed toward Conkeldurr, the obvious play. So now this is the important turn where, both players need to predict what the other player is going to do. Does Jumpei leave that Tyranitar in? Does Brendan switch his Conkeldurr out? What do they do here? What are you expecting they do here?
Well, I mean, one advantage that Brendan probably has here is that assuming he's using the same one he used at Worlds, Brendan's Conkeldurr is a little bit different from the standard right now. Typically, people are running the Life Orb, or I guess even Fighting Gem, Iron Fist, Hammer-On version, whereas he typically runs Drain Punch. So I would expect that Brendan will target that left slot and try to get some healing here so that he can survive the Cresselia Psyshock.
And he opts not to. He goes for the Ice Punch on the Cresselia. Yeah.
Probably
and he gets another freeze. So Brendan, just rolling in freezes today. That freeze doesn't matter. He gets the knockout with both attacks, correctly predicting that Tyranitar would switch out.
It's a cold day on the battlefield. I mean, that is a better play by Brendan there, assuming that he wouldn't have healed enough to survive. I guess and assuming that he wouldn't have gotten another freeze either way. But still a tough spot for him here. He needs to attack in the next 2 turns and heal some health here or he's going to go down. But he does get an important knockout here since that was a Pokemon that Raiko wasn't doing much to. And we do see Metagross in here, which is actually a big deal because we know it can't protect.
But Choice Band variants do run Bullet Punch, which we do see here, and takes that knockout. Do you think Brendan was not expecting that?
He must not have been. I was kind of hoping for a Raiko switch there because you'd be protected from both Bullet Punch and from really anything Thundurus can do. So fairly safe switch there.
Brendan is just getting these freezes. There's another freeze, third freeze in this game. I'm not sure if it'll matter much with how deep Brendan is, in terms of not winning this game due to the rest of the Pokemon left. But that's just another freeze that he's getting that may not matter in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it making too big of a difference, but boy, are the RNG gods on his side in this one.
They seem to really want him to win, and we'll see what happens here if that Metagross thaws, and potentially that freeze again will be for naught. And this Raikou and this Cresselia have to deal with not only these 2 Pokemon but a Tyranitar in the back. Do you even see that happening?
No, I was just gonna say, unfortunately for the RNG gods, I could really see Raikou knocking out these 2 Pokemon, but the Tyranitar still has way too much health for this to be a manageable situation. He needed to keep Conkeldurr alive long enough to take out Tyranitar for him, or at least take off a big chunk of that health. Because, I mean, he could knock out these 2, and Tyranitar would easily be able to finish the game on his own, barring, like, a chain of crits or, like, a Thunderbolt paralysis fully paralyzed, which I guess I shouldn't rule out at this point.
Yeah, with the amount of luck that Brendan is seeing here, you can't rule anything out. You could potentially see another freeze. You never know. 3 freezes in one game. I've seen about 1 total in my VGC career, and that Metagross is going to stay frozen solid this turn, so it's a lot harder to thaw after that first turn.
Looks like it's not going to have to try, though. Both electric Pokemon picking up a knockout there, and the wheels are falling off the bus for Brendan here. Trick Room does wear off for it, which is nice for Raikou that way, but I don't see how it's going to deal with the Tyranitar here unless you like secretly hacked Rasnot onto it or something, in which case I would have to disqualify him.
Now we haven't seen all 4 moves. Could it potentially carry the Aura Sphere since it is shiny?
I think we have seen. I guess we haven't seen. We're assuming Protect, but we've never seen it. I guess so. I guess it could, but I don't think it even gets the knockout from here, unless it's like the rarely seen minus special defense Tyranitar. Or I guess it could crit still.
No Aura Sphere. Here's the Thunderbolt. Didn't do very much damage. So yeah, as you said, you can essentially call this strong crunch. Probably going to take this knockout. And it does. So now we're 1-1. We haven't seen the rest of Brennan's Pokemon. We don't know what they are. What sort of adjustments does he need to make now? He did win that first game pretty, overwhelmingly, but now he's kind of stuck and he needs to win this last game here. And Jumpei learned a lot more about his team.
Yeah, I can't say I'm in love with Brendan's odds here. I do think that the way Brendan is going to win this game is getting Bisharp out at the right times with the right opponents. He's got to use Bisharp to protect his other Pokemon and get them out in situations where they can start removing threats for him. Because Jumpei just had 4 Pokemon alive for too long that game. Brendan needs to start taking out targets a little bit quicker if he wants to have a chance at this one. Because Jumpei's team is going to be better at playing the grinding game than his is, barring a bunch of freezes. Especially with things like Choice Band Metagross. It's fairly bulky, but it does tons of damage. It's great over longer games. I think that Metagross especially, he's got to find a way to take it out of the commission quickly like he did in Game 1. That'll make it real easy for him to finish it off. He can't give it those free turns. So it got 2 free Meteor Mashes at the beginning of the first game, and it took out like a Pokemon and a half. He just can't allow that to happen. I don't know his last Pokemon, if it's something that he can use to help him control that Metagross a little bit, but he's going to need to find a way to control that. I think if he doesn't have like a steel type other than Bisharp or like a fire Pokemon or something, it's going to be a rough go for him.
I imagine we would have seen that Pokemon, considering Jumpei did lead Metagross both games. It could potentially just be a Pokemon that isn't very helpful in this matchup due to never seeing it at all. Both, I guess Brendan's having Wi-Fi difficulties here. Fortunately, sideline reporter Cybertron's not here to help us out. Outside of getting a lot of freezes, is there the lead matchup that Brendan led first game was very helpful. Should he immediately go back to that, or is he going to just deal with that Metagross some other way?
I mean, I have to say I kind of liked his decision not to just do that again in the second game. I mean, unless he's got sideline reporter Aaron Zhang running damage calcs for him to figure out whether or not it's likely that will be successful. I don't know what the odds of Night Slash and Thunderbolt getting the knockout are, but if he's not more likely than not to get that KO, I just don't think it's a viable way to lead, because even if he weakens Metagross to do it, he's taking a ton of damage there, and giving Thundurus Therian for him a free turn if he leads that way again is really dangerous. I mean, he's just got to try to find ways not to. I don't know. I mean, if he can trade Pokemon, it's worth it. But if he just gives Metagross a free switch out to Tyranitar or something, and loses a Pokemon for it, he's going to lose the game. So I feel like just leading Bisharp Raikou again is a little too high risk. But he needs to find a way to put some damage on Metagross and then get that duo out there, and he'll probably be able to win the game. He needs setup first. Or he can just click the Night Slash button and use the RNG God power to get a crit, and then it'll be fine.
Oh, I'm sure he can, get those crits with all those freezes. In your head, you get those 3 freezes but still lose the game. How hard is that for you to accept?
I mean, if it was me, I don't think it would bother me at all. So he lost the game before any of that started happening, right? And it's always a bit of a tease, when you get the RNG and you still can't quite come back. But I mean, realistically, the point where he lost that game is when Bisharp fainted, not when he got like the freezes were after the game was over. There were still animations going on. Pokemon were still battling, but it was over. And hopefully he realizes that and knows that it's not like he lost in spite of some freezes. If he had gotten those freezes when the game was actually still in contention, he probably would have won the game. So I mean, you can't take that sort of thing too hard. But I mean, that's sort of the thing too, is that he's a younger player, so it might be a little harder for him to see things that way too. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, two of those freezes were, directly before he got a knockout on that Pokemon. So in the end, those freezes didn't matter. But just getting those things, yeah, just like, oh, I'm getting some luck on my side, but you still lose.
Well, maybe he just feels like he's living right. If he does the right things this game, maybe the game will help him out a little bit. You gotta think positive. Come on.
And Brendan does go back to his trusty Bisharp and Raikou lead. And Jumpei is going to go back. It worked before. Let's just do it again. Metagross and Thundurus, Therian lead.
Little do we realize that Jumpei actually made a bet with one of his teammates that he would lead the same two Pokemon every game and win. I mean, I like it on Junpei's end, though, just because, like, again, assuming that the damage rolls in the first game weren't, particularly low, if that's not a common knockout on Metagross, it's a great lead, because he can do nothing and end up ahead and just, play it like he did the first game. Or he can switch to Tyranitar, which I think is the smartest play, and get a free knockout, probably, by having Thundurus attack Bisharp. So I don't think this is an advantageous situation for Brendan this early in the game. It's too easy for something to go wrong, and he needs both these Pokemon too much.
So Brendan's going to need to, use his prediction skills and not the RNG skills to, get out of this situation in the positive.
Yeah, I mean, he may have a plan that I don't here. I feel like this is a situation where you probably want to switch in a hurry if you're him. And again, we still don't know Thundurus's item. Or actually, it's Electric Gem. So you have to work out for that explosion I mentioned last game.
And we do see the Protect, so potentially an explosion coming later in this turn if it does get to attack. There's the strong Sucker Punch and Thunderbolt directed towards that Metagross. He doesn't get the knockout, and the Hammer Arm does hit that Bisharp, unlike game one. So Brendan is out of his Bisharp, but is he potentially in a decent position?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I mentioned in the pregame I didn't think trading Pokemon was a good idea for him. But it's not that bad. I mean, he gets Metagross low enough without losing Raikou, which is the more important one here. So he can just snarl the rest of the game out. The issue now is that he needs to set up a way for Kinkeldurr, assuming that is again his fourth Pokemon, which it should be, to knock Tyranitar out. That was the point where he screwed up last game. I guess like I said, I felt like the game was over already because he gave up too much too early. But Kinkeldurr needs to control Tyranitar, and then Raikou can control the game as long as Trick Room's up at the right points for Brendan here. So it's a manageable situation for him. But I just feel like by losing the first knockout of this matchup, it makes it much more difficult to make plays. You end up with less risky plays, like this one, for instance. Like the ideal play on Brendan's end is to Trick Room and get Kinkeldurr in. But it's extremely risky to do that because Hammer Arm and Thunderbolt would knock it out. So like you have to take more risks to get your momentum back because you gave up that one knockout early. And I don't know. It's a tough position for a younger player to try to out predict a world's veteran like Jumpei here, and he's just gonna have to do it to win the game now.
Could he do something potentially like Snarl here, and then do some decent damage and lower that special defense there, and then just Ice Beam, and potentially put himself in an okay position, but he would need to get a Trick Room off to get that Conkeldurr out safely.
Yeah, I feel like you've got to set up for that. Like that's the end game here. You need to be in that situation.
And Jumpei is gonna switch both Pokemon out. He's been a huge fan of switching here. We see the
surprised
Tyranitar
that,
Cresselia.
Raikou isn't switching since it would have gone first.
And Brendan just does go to the Snarl, and all the special attacks dropping. It's always exciting. And the Ice Beam, as I would have done, potentially the wrong play here, though.
Yeah, like I said, I would have liked to see the what am I talking about? I would have liked to see the Trick Room and In'tl. Oh my God, the Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi wins.
That should be a pretty easily remakeable game. So we apologize for that again. I would have preferred to see the Kinkeldr switch in the Trick Room there. I feel like you need to get that Trick Room up now to get rid of Tyranitar. Like you got a priority list if you're Brendan, right? Like Metagross is first, then Tyranitar, then Raikou can win the game. Like he got Objective 1 done, and now he's going to work toward Objective 2. And what happened instead there was that Tyranitar got in for free, taking no damage against 2 Pokemon it can do well against. Which basically, the situation Brendan is in, assuming the remake there, is that he's got to bring Kinkeldr in now, but he doesn't have Trick Room up. He's got to do that unless he wants to give Cresselia free shots at him. He also has to deal with Cresselia's Citrus Berry if he's going to leave Kinkeldr out for a while, because it's going to be much more difficult for him just to blow it up like he did in the first game with the amount of health it has. Secondly, it still has to worry about Tyranitar switching out because it needs to get 2 more knockouts before it's trapped. So he's got a lot of setup to do. And I guess it's just not getting that free switch that he was given there, or not taking the free switch he was given, I should say. It wastes an opportunity there to avoid taking chip damage. And he's got to keep his health high to have a shot here. We do see that the Pokemon we haven't seen yet is Jellicent, by the way. So I guess it makes sense that we're not seeing it here.
Now, I guess potentially Brendan's lack of experience against hardened VGC masters like Jumpei here could be causing him to not make the optimal plays. He's been playing against juniors for most of his career. He does play in live tournaments against other seniors and masters, but is that coming back to I guess haunt him here?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't want to criticize him too much. I think Brendan is actually really, really impressive for his age, and he's actually played a really good series here. But I think some of the thing with his transition to seniors and eventually to masters in a couple years is going to be that the flow of play is much quicker at masters than it is in juniors. You don't get too many people just guessing at their type or their first level prediction where it's my best move is this, so I'll do that. They're anticipating your moves faster. They make the second and third level predictions. The game is much quicker, and you've got to be ready to play that. And if you aren't ready to play that, you're going to have you're going to fall behind in the chip damage wars. You need to take those free situations you get when your opponent has the option of attacking you but chooses not to, in order to keep yourself in a good board position. And it didn't really happen this game for him so far. Please no crits.
And looks like they are remaking it, but that would look like a high damage roll from that sucker punch. And he does get that knockout, so
awkward.
Yeah,
I guess we learned that it was possible, but that's going to be irritating to try to set back up.
So yeah, I saw that high damage roll from that sucker punch, and I assumed that Raikou would take that knockout. Unfortunately, Brendan didn't get it in the real game. Instead, they got it in the replay, so I assume they're going to replay that.
We do apologize for this. This is one of the frustrations of trying to remake games, is that Pokemon is a game with lots of RNG in it, and there's the more obvious RNG, like critical hits or Ice Beam freezing 7 times in a row, and the less obvious RNG, every attack has a damage range of 12%. So there's a pretty decent range of things that could happen. This is also what I was talking about before when I was mentioning that I didn't know if I thought it was a good play to double attack Metagross like Brendan did or not. It's confusing because I'm not familiar with these EV spreads on either side really, so I don't know how much what the average roll is, right? And if on average he would have picked that knockout up, I think it's absolutely the best play Brendan could make. But it didn't happen in the first game, so based on that information, I'm assuming that that's closer to the average roll. But obviously, he can't pick up that knockout. We saw Sucker Punch at a high roll there, so he did get it. I guess the damage rolls aren't really something you think about very much in Pokemon, other than when you're EVing. But it's important to figure out in situations like this one, I guess. Hopefully, that was an average roll, or we could be here for a while.
Yeah, yeah, that is not a draw as depicted there. No one won that. Just a redo essentially that was failed, and they're gonna redo it again. Trying to remake a disconnect from 2 games ago now. Um, I guess it is our only way of potentially fixing things where disconnects and just issues like that happen with the internet and our streaming setups we have here.
Yeah,
Uh,
hopefully, at some point in the future, there will be an option to rejoin games after disconnects. This is one of those things that I expect to be a standard feature for video games, but that Pokemon does not have. But maybe someday. In the
I
meantime,
want.
remakes.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a limitation on the hardware or just something that Game Freak hasn't really implemented into the design into the games and the Wi-Fi
I,
functionality that they
yeah,
have.
I get the impression that that would be very difficult to implement, just because, at least with the way they set up Gen 5, since the matches don't take place on a server, they take place like on the client side. And I feel like reconnecting to games in that way would be very difficult to organize, as opposed to a server side game, because you probably lose the game when you disconnect, which is why it doesn't work to begin with for like tournaments and stuff. Um, so I don't know. I'm hoping that whatever they use to fix Wi-Fi in Gen 6, assuming they actually did that, would also make that a plausible solution, even if they didn't do it this version. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, they are doing that. If you disconnect, you lose in X and Y. So battles could potentially be done on server side and resume futures included. I kind of doubt it, just because Nintendo and Game Freak, tend to be a step behind on internet stuff, unfortunately, for us and our stuff we do here, and I guess the rest of the world. When you get a disconnect, you kind of want to resume sometimes, even if it is just in a random battle.
Maybe next
So that
time.
yeah, hopefully eventually we'll see something like that. Uh, it's taking a long time for Turn 1 that is supposed to be remade. Hopefully Wi-Fi didn't hit them again.
Here's hoping they remember what they did, 10 minutes ago, because Brendan isn't nearly old enough to be becoming forgetful.
How old is Jumpei?
I actually don't know. I think he's around our age.
Okay, so I mean he does love Jeff Gordon, and I think Jeff Gordon's heyday was,
I was
late
gonna say the
90s.
same thing. Yeah, when you're a fan of a racer that I know, you're probably at least as old as I am.
Okay, let's see if this sucker punch gets a good roll. That's a high roll again. I don't think it should be doing that much. We'll see if this is a low roll. No. So, remake part 3 potentially.
Makes you wonder how unlucky Brendan got that both of the ones that counted were rolls that didn't knock it out. I'm really curious what the odds of this knocking out are. I hope that after they battle, we get the Metagross EVs from Jumpei just to see what the odds actually were. I'm curious now.
Yeah, that 2 successive high rolls like that, you gotta question what the did Brendan really actually have bad rolls during the game and could potentially be winning these games a lot quicker. And again, this is not a draw. This is supposed to be game 3. Gonna remake it again. As we said, Wi-Fi functionality and just the RNG issues of Pokemon coming back to haunt us in this situation here. Hopefully you stick around with us because they only got to remake what 2 turns, I believe. Shouldn't be that hard unless Brendan got really unlucky in that last game, which
I'm
was
not gonna
now.
lie when I say I honestly don't even remember how many turns it was anymore. But this time for sure, things
I
will be
think
different.
it was Cresselia ice beamed a switch in from a Cresselia from Thundurus to Cresselia and Raikou Snarl.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think it was 2 turns in.
What could go wrong?
Another high roll, Or maybe it's a normal roll.
I'm really curious about that now. Like, damage rolls are one thing in Pokemon I really hate, and like I can understand sort of why they exist, but I feel like our game would be a lot better if attacks just did the same amount of damage every time. Like damage ranges in general are not something in RPGs I think are a good mechanic, and this is sort of reminding me why. But it's what we've got.
Yeah, I mean, fighting games and things like that, they all have consistent damage. I think MOBAs, they usually have consistent damage, Scott.
I mean, there's ranges, but it's less random than in Pokemon. Like for instance in League, your critical hit rate it normalizes, right? It's like if you don't crit for an amount of time, your crit rate goes up until you crit once, and then it goes back. So like, it there's mechanics in the game that make it like what should happen on average happen, rather than just relying on the RNG to even out over a long period of time. Whereas Pokemon is just it's a big picture game that we play in small quantities of games, which is a bad combination, I think.
So looks like he's going to use Night Slash instead of Sucker Punch there. Get a low roll.
Oh my god, it worked.
And the Hammer Arm does hit, so we're essentially back to square one, part one. Still need to get this second turn completed. Hopefully, there's not much luck involved in the second turn, other than potentially a freeze from an Ice Beam here.
I'm not gonna lie, was kind of hoping we get the Night Slash crit boost showing up there.
Remake part 4.
The orange just be like, I'll show you to outsmart me. I'm the boss here.
That sounds like a horror movie series now. And hopefully they remember.
Movie, I would not watch.
Hopefully they remember to remake this turn, considering how long ago it was.
Yeah,
Jumpei switching out, so yeah, it looks like they got that right. So back to square one of game 3. Scott, who do you got?
I still like Jumpei's odds here. I feel like Brendan is a turn behind now, and it's tough to get that turn back. If he can knock out Tyranitar, the game's his, but I don't see how it's going to happen. Again, we do apologize for the time that we spent restoring the game there, but we're back in action, and we'd prefer just forget this ever happened. Again, a 20-minute span, you should just wipe out of your memories.
Yeah,
forget 1,000 things every day,
right? You probably don't remember what you had for lunch. You didn't remember the last 20 minutes. In my case, I had Jack in the Box tacos.
In my case, I woke up at 2 p.m. I know I'm lying. I had to do a fantasy draft today. I still didn't have lunch though. Anyway, we're back where we're here. Like I said before, I feel like Brendan's got to get the Trick Room up, and he's got to knock out Tyranitar. Not necessarily in that order, but probably in that order. He's got to look out for double targets in Raiko's slot here, because on Jumpei's end, all you have to do is stop the free switch to Conkeldurr, and you're probably in good shape. So if he just keeps firing away at that slot, it's going to be really tough for Brendan to make any transitions here, because he only has the 3 Pokemon left, and Cresselia can't do significant damage to either the enemy Cresselia or to Tyranitar.
Now it looks like he opted to switch Cresselia out for that Conkeldurr.
That is a clever way to foil the plan I just described.
And yeah, it looks like Jumpei is going to double target that Raikou. Potentially this Crunch is actually going towards the Cresselia slot, which it does. Hits a not very effective Conkeldurr, but still does sizable damage due to that Dark Gem. And so what is Brendan's position here? I mean, that Cresselia should be faster than that Conkeldurr, and Conkeldurr is about 50% health.
Yeah, I mean,
does Brendan still have his outs?
Yeah, I think his position's a lot better this turn than it should be. I don't completely understand why you don't just double target Raikou slot there. You get that knockout. You get Cresselia back out. He's got to eat the crunch from Tyranitar. Maybe you have a turn as Jumpei there where you've got to predict the Trick Room and Trick Room yourself, but I just feel like you end up in a better situation uh, going that route. Whereas now you've got King Keldor, it's enough health to be dangerous and almost certainly survives a Psyshock, and two Thunderbolts from Raikou probably knock out Cresselia, so you're in a dangerous slot now where you've got to outpredict Brendan and not get ice punched on the switch or anything. Or even Snarl now is a pain again because it's going to greatly reduce any momentum that Jumpei can get. Like you can't give him that freebie.
And Jumpei is going to obviously read that and switch to Thunderous. Now, Brendan does opt for that Snarl, so I assume that was the correct move. So he gets the minus special attack on both Pokemon and gets a decent crit there. And so it'll help that Conkeldurr to survive this turn. Let's see what happens here with the Psyshock.
He's probably going to take damage this turn with that Fight Gem Drain Punch.
Yeah, so not enough damage to get the knockout, and we got a Fight Gem Drain Punch. It's going to heal him back up. And so Brendan potentially in a really good position here.
Yeah, like I said, I don't understand why Jumpei creates that opportunity for Brendan there, and Brendan's doing a perfect job of capitalizing on it now. Cresselia low enough that Thunderbolt may get it, and if it doesn't, it's still sitting at -2 special attack. King Keldor only lost about 24 HP that turn, so not a bad turn for a turn where you get a knockout on I guess the second most threatening Pokemon on the opponent's team, and its partner gets reduced down to quite a low amount of health, and just tough spot now. Star will probably knock out both of these Pokemon if Jumpei gives him that option, in which case I believe Jumpei just loses the game. I don't understand why we're seeing Metagross here instead of Tyranitar.
Jumpei's overwhelming advantage suddenly reversed and now in Brendan's favor. Brendan could take those knockouts quite easily with his really fast Raikou. Bullet Punch potentially could not knock that Raikou out, so barring a critical hit, I don't see what sort of outs Jumpei has here.
Yeah, he's just got to be careful here. He doesn't want to do anything silly that would cough King Keldor up, but as long as he avoids that, he should be able to close this one out here. We know that Tyranitar doesn't have a Chapel Berry because we've seen the Dark Gem already, so he just kind of has to take this one easy. He should be all right as long as he doesn't expose King Keldor. Or, I guess, like you said, I think a critical hit Bullet Punch might be able to knock Raikou out, but other than that, he looks pretty good.
Yeah, so the simple play is sometimes often the best, and I assume we're going to see a Protect Snarl, potentially get the knockout on both, and leaves that Conkeldurr free to take a big knockout on that Tyranitar and seal this up for Team America here.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm
And
Jumpei,
Brendan,
I switch Metagross out for Tyranitar and invite Brendan to make a mistake. Because I mean, it's unlikely you're going to get Drain Punched here. You might get Mach Punched, but that'd probably be a misplay because you should be assuming the Bullet Punch. So, and then Psyshock and King Keldor. I feel like that's the highest percentage play here, but not a high percentage play by any means.
it looks like Jumpei is really thinking this one out because, I guess his tournament life hinges on this one turn.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to just fold over, right? Like, he potentially has some ways that he can set up a trap here and get Brendan to give him the game back, but he's going to need some help from Brendan here. He's got to outsmart him if he wants to win this game.
Now, does he need luck, or is there a play that he has that
I think he's got play still. I mean, I think
Okay.
luck is by far the most probable way he's going to win this game. A critical hit on Raikou would turn it right around, but I think instead of playing for that, it's smarter to switch to Tyranitar and hope that Brendan creates him an opening, just because you've got to play. Playing for like a 6% crit is not a good plan unless it's your only option, which it isn't.
And Brendan's opting to keep his Conkeldurr healthy, switching to Cresselia. And so he still has his win condition. Bullet Punch onto Cresselia, doing negligible damage, and Snarl, super effective. It does not get the knockout on the Cresselia, but it does on that Metagross. The Sand should take care of that Cresselia, but it does get a big Thunder Wave off onto that Raikou. So
So
was that the play
yeah,
Jumpei should have
I
had?
mean, like I said, I would have liked to see a switch to Tyranitar there, which would have taken basically 0 damage and still gotten the Thunder Wave off. Um, I think he actually has a decent shot at winning the game from, or not decent, but a greater than 0 shot at winning the game from that position, because he still has Metagross alive, and Tyranitar is capable of knocking out. Like Tyranitar can crunch the Cresselia slot, and I mean, I don't. It's still bad, I guess, in my head, but it's like I said, it's better than 0, which is basically what he needed. A Snarl miss there, so he was banking at a 5% chance, which is actually worse than the crit.
All right, well, we got a DC, unfortunately, again. Aaron fixed that internet. It looks like Jumpei is going to concede to Brendan here, so I guess he's assuming that he lost that anyways.
Yeah, he had no
Good
way to get out
series
of that
played
one.
by both players. So,
Yes.
Scott, what do you take from that?
I mean, it was a fun series there. I feel like I mentioned at the DC there. I thought that Jumpei had a great advantage as long as he kept the pressure on. But splitting attacks is not a good strategy very often unless you're going to get a knockout with one correct prediction and you're just like doing residual damage. But he split damage for no reason. I think the 4th turn of the game, and that's why he lost, like straight up. If he'd just double target Raikou, he would have won the game. I also don't like the last play very much, where I feel like he should have switch Tyranitar out to at least try to make a play rather than just hoping for luck. But I mean, sometimes it's how you got to play the game, I guess. And I thought Brendan played a better series there. I gave him a little bit of crap when he didn't switch into the Trick Room there, but the way he played it ended up being better. And 2 games that he won, I think he just dominated with Raikou there. So a cool tool to win with too, and not a Pokemon that we've seen, too many games won by. But it was great in this series, and he used it really well. So I'm proud of Brendan there. That was a great series by him.
Yeah, he is the juniors world champion, and he clearly showed there why he is the juniors world champion. He is in seniors this upcoming year. Now back to Raikou. Is it potentially a Cresselia replacement, or something that kind of fits in the same mold as Cresselia, but you can't really directly replace Cresselia with Raikou?
I mean, I think it's the most niche of support Pokemon that are good. Like, I think there's like 6, 7 support Pokemon that are like world's caliber, and Raikou's niche is the smallest of all of them, but it's definitely there. I mean, if you can make a team that deals with physical threats well, like Snarl can shut down a whole bunch of the rest of the metagame. We saw Dingram pull that off, and Brendan showed it to us again here. You've got to find a way to control those physical Pokemon. We saw that in this series where Brendan had to be really careful with how he dealt with Metagross and Tyranitar, because they were great answers to Raikou and some of his other Pokemon. But as soon as you get rid of them, Raikou just choked out the game. Like, it was over when it was just Raikou and special Pokemon, which is something you don't get out of Cresselia. But I mean, obviously, Cresselia has a lot more traditional support options that are usually more universally helpful. Like, it's got the speed control. It walls common Pokemon, which Raikou doesn't do quite the same level other than like offensive Thunderous. So that was actually one of the best counters, I think, for Thunderous T, a Pokemon that you don't see much in America, but is a good choice against the Japanese team, I guess. So a smart choice by Brendan there, I think.
Now, Raikou's speed tier actually lends it to being a anti-special attacker Pokemon, due to outspeeding a lot of the common threats like, that Thunderous Therian we saw there, Volcarona, other things like Zapdos that, it could easily handle because of the Snarl, and then, the defensive boosts it can get, with the EVs and still maintain some of that speed.
Yeah, I mean, the speed's really interesting too. That's always been Raikou's best quality since even in, I guess, the old days when it was kind of genuinely inferior to the other electric Pokemon in singles. At least it was the fastest, which will do some cool things. And one cool thing it can do in VGC is that not only is it faster than like special Pokemon, but it's faster than Tornadus too, which has recently become one of the more popular Pokemon again because of how well it combos with some other offensive Pokemon in Defiant. So just being able to outrun and swat Tornadus is a big deal with an electric Pokemon like Raikou that can easily take it down in one hit without any real investment.